In the shadows of the Middle East, the unthinkable unfolded. The most powerful military alliance in human history, the combined air forces, intelligence networks, satellite grids, and precision munitions of the United States and Israel, turned its full might against one country. According to every strategic doctrine written in Washington and Tel Aviv, the outcome should have been immediate and absolute. That country collapses. Its government falls. Its military disintegrates. Its people staring at rubble lose the will to resist. That is the theory. That is the pattern from Baghdad to Tripoli to Kabul. But it did not happen to Iran. And in that single seismic failure, the world just witnessed a civilizational turning point. The model of American power projection that has shaped the globe since 1991 just ran headlong into a wall. And the wall did not move. What we saw was not merely a military standoff. It was history delivering a verdict. To understand why Iran survived what no modern state was supposed to survive, you must stop counting missiles and start thinking like a historian. You must stop asking what Iran possessed and begin asking what Iran truly wanted. Because the first law of strategy that Washington forgot is this: a state that knows exactly what it wants and is willing to pay any price to get it is infinitely more dangerous than one with 10 times the firepower that no longer remembers why it fights. Iran knew precisely what it wanted: survival, control of the Strait of Hormuz, the reduction of American influence in the Middle East to a manageable nuisance, and the public demonstration to every watching nation that the American military guarantee was no longer absolute. Iran did not need to defeat America in open battle. Iran simply needed to not lose. And in the calculus of 21st century power, not losing is victory. Now consider the structural miscalculation. The United States military is built as an inverted pyramid. Air power at the apex, naval assets in the middle, ground forces deliberately minimized. It is engineered for shock and spectacle, for dramatic footage and swift press conferences. It was never designed for the grinding, multi-year war of attrition that Iran had spent decades preparing to wage. Real wars, the wars that redraw maps and redefine eras, are wars of endurance. They are won by the cheapest, most flexible, most motivated resource on the battlefield, not an F-35, a human being who believes in what he is dying for. Israel made a parallel error, more emotionally charged. It mistook tactical precision for strategic clarity. Israel can strike any target on Earth with devastating accuracy, but it could never answer the question that matters most. And then what? Strike the nuclear sites, and then what? Remove the leadership, and then what? Destroy the missile stockpiles, and then what? The Iranian state is not a building. It is not a server farm. It is not a single general who can be eliminated by a drone. It is a 4,000-year-old civilization that has outlasted the Greeks, Alexander, the Mongols, and the British. A nation 76 years old believed it could solve the Persian equation through engineering alone. History does not bend to engineering. What both Washington and Tel Aviv fundamentally misread was Iranian coherence, not capability. They counted centrifuges and ignored culture. They tracked launchers and overlooked meaning. They failed to grasp the concept of societal mobilization, the unbreakable will of a population to absorb punishment without fracturing. When bombs fell on Tehran, Iranians did not see governmental failure. They saw foreigners invading again. And that ancient reflex forged cohesion no precision weapon can shatter. Through game theory, the mismatch becomes clear. The United States brought a linear escalation ladder: airstrikes, economic strangulation, leadership decapitation, collapse. Iran refused to stand on that ladder. Instead, it played a different game: selective pressure, calibrated response, targeting the very logic of American escalation. Every rung America climbed, Iran raised the cost of the next, not only through force, but through geography. The Strait of Hormuz is not rhetoric. It is the jugular of the global oil economy. Through proxies, diplomacy, and the devastating simplicity of refusing to break, Iran turned Israel's greatest strength into its deepest vulnerability. Israel's doctrine demands short, decisive campaigns. It cannot sustain indefinite mobilization. A small nation with a small population cannot afford endless war. Iran understood this perfectly. By denying the clean, conclusive victory Israel needed, Iran dragged the conflict into terrain where time itself became a weapon. Domestic pressure mounted. Economic costs soared. The narrative battlefield, so often ignored by conventional analysts, tilted decisively. Because modern wars are not won only by what happens on the ground. They are won by what populations believe is happening. The United States entered with every narrative advantage: media dominance, diplomatic leverage, institutional legitimacy. It lost the narrative through accumulating civilian suffering, visible infrastructure devastation, and the growing gap between official claims and documented reality. When the narrative fractures, coalitions fracture. When coalitions fracture, military operations lose their political oxygen. The deeper lesson stretches far beyond this conflict. The age in which a single power or alliance could impose its will on a coherent, motivated civilization through pure military and economic coercion, that age is ending. Not because the weapons have grown weaker, they have never been stronger, but because the conditions that once made coercion decisive, information monopoly, unchallenged legitimacy, narrative control, allied unity, have eroded in a newly multipolar world. Resilience now defeats dominance. Iran did not prevail because its missiles outranged America's or its technology surpassed Israel's. Iran prevailed because it understood the game while its adversaries were still playing by rules from a previous era. It outlasted Western political will, that most fragile resource in democratic societies, bound by elections, media cycles, and the exhaustion of populations weary of endless Middle Eastern wars. America sought regime change. Israel sought denuclearization. Iran sought survival. When those objectives collide across the lens of history and civilizational endurance, the outcome was never the mystery Washington and Tel Aviv claimed. The side fighting on its own soil, anchored by 4,000 years of memory, possesses an advantage no weapon system can neutralize. It is called will, and Iran never ran out of it. What you are witnessing in real time is not one isolated military outcome. It is the recalibration of global power. The unipolar fantasy has collided with reality. The nations of the global south are watching. China is watching. Russia is watching. Every government that has ever faced an American ultimatum is watching. And they are learning the same lesson. It is still possible to say no. It is still possible to absorb the pressure. It is still possible to survive the unthinkable if your society holds together and if you are patient enough to let the other side's political will collapse first. Empires do not fall overnight, but they fall. They overextend. They misread their adversaries. They mistake technological superiority for strategic wisdom. They confuse the power to punish with the power to prevail. And eventually they meet a civilization that simply will not break. That meeting has just occurred. And the world will never be the same.